here in the French Riviera at the Shield documentary opening on women's health. And here with my favorite doctor, Mr. Carnivore Doctor, Anthony Chaffee, who inspired me to become carnivore. You and Elle, your fiance, 100% inspired me to become carnivore. I never thought I could do it. I never thought it would be a good idea, actually. The only reason, as I tell you, I was willing to try it for a week is because we had an upcoming interview one time, and I just wanted to see what it would be like. But I had no intention of staying with something that strict. And now that I've been carnivore for just under a month, I will never not be carnivore. Nice. So, Anthony, thank you so much for coming all the way from Perth, Australia to the French Riviera with Elle. And I wanted you to please start, if you don't mind, by introducing yourself and your background as a rugby player, a doctor, and whatever else you're super passionate about in life.
Well, sure. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an absolutely lovely place. So it's never a bad time coming to this part of the world.
Yes.
Well, my name is Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm a medical doctor. I was specializing in neurosurgery, but now I have a practice in, I guess you would call it preventative medicine, but also addressing metabolic health and root causes of disease. And so I found that through years of research and clinical practice, that dietary and lifestyle interventions were a much more powerful tool to heal and repair and reverse medical issues than I was ever taught in medical school. In medical school, we're taught, here's a problem, here's a pill, and a pill for every ill. And if you think about it in a sort of a more cynical way, it sort of feels like the medical establishment have been turned into almost street-level drug dealers, that we're being told, hey, here's this drug that will get this effect for your clientele. And it's really just there to generate revenue for other companies that are not actually interested in the root cause of disease. They're not actually interested in curing the disease, stopping the disease process, and actually helping humanity. In that sense, it's a matter of, well, yes, we can help people, but only to this extent. We're going to treat the symptoms and let you live with the disease. We're not going to go further than that and cure the disease, because then that dries up their revenue pool.
Of course.
You know, the comedian Chris Rock said this in the 1990s. He said they're never going to look for cures. They want you to give you something that you can live with.
Yes.
And they can do it. They just don't want to do it because it makes them money in a comedic way, which is very funny. I encourage people to look it up. But he's dead on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I've found that this is just a much more realistic and rewarding way of treating people, because it actually treats the problem as opposed to just treating the symptoms.
Yes.
As an athlete, a lifelong athlete, I was an All-American in high school. I played rugby professionally for 10 years before medical school. And I was always interested in optimal health, obviously putting the fuel in my body that would give me the best output. I was always conscious about that. And having discovered a more biologically appropriate way to eat, it's not really a discovery, it's something we've been doing since humans have been humans. And it's just that more recently, in the last 40, 50 years, we've completely covered over that with all this processed industrial foods that make a lot of people a lot of money, but don't actually help people get healthy and sustain themselves. And so once I went back to our biological roots, humans have been apex predators since we've existed. My health and performance massively improved, and I started looking at that from the context of medicine and realizing that we're biologically carnivores. That's just taxonomically what we are. And we are not eating as such. And so any animal in the zoo, this is why they have signs at the zoo that say, don't feed the animals. It makes them very sick if they eat outside of their natural diet. Don't feed them the thing that you're eating. It makes them sick. Well, what is it doing to you? It's making you sick too. And so we forget that we're animals as well, biologically. Maybe we're a more spiritual animal, whatever. We still hold to the biological laws that apply to all life on Earth. We have a specific set of nutrients that we require and specific things that can cause harm. That's nutrition. And going back to that more biologically appropriate way of eating not only improved my health massively, my athletic performance massively, but also the health of my patients and professional athletes that I work with as well. So that's
because you actually work, this is the thing. There are some doctors that have the credential of doctor, but they don't really work as a doctor and didn't work much as a doctor, a physician, seeing a lot of patients. You actually have a practice where you in and out see lots of patients. You've seen probably thousands of patients over the years, right?
Oh, easily, yeah.
So you actually treat patients even today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I haven't stopped my clinical practice. I didn't go to medical school to become an influencer. I think that would have been a waste of life. Couldn't think of a more horrible thing to do, honestly.
What was your purpose? So why did you go to medical school?
I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to do surgeries. I wanted to help people. I wanted to know how the human body worked down to a molecular level. I remember thinking that as a child at my grandmother's house in Santa Barbara. I was like, I want to know how the body works down to the molecule. And no one's ever going to know that completely. However, I think I have a pretty good grasp on things, looking at things from a biological point of view and understanding how the things that we eat or don't eat affect us negatively or positively. And so, especially surgery, I mean, I always thought that being able to go inside someone's body and physically fix them with your hands was probably the most incredible thing I could ever think of. And it still is. You know, I do this now because I find that it has such a huge impact in people's lives, and there aren't really people out there addressing the root cause of diabetes, the root cause of rheumatoid arthritis, the root cause of multiple sclerosis, and actually being able to reverse them, which we are seeing. You know, more studies and case reports and case series are coming out on this, but we are absolutely seeing this on the ground, and almost no one is doing this because they don't know about it yet, but more and more doctors see this, they are adopting it because it does work so well. And so I can't really justify not doing it until, you know, I get enough of a groundswell in people doing this that they don't need me on the ground treating them, and I can go back to being happy in the OR doing surgeries.
That's amazing. Now, if you don't mind, I want to go into something a little controversial on carnivore. You are a doctor that treats people in your clinics, in your practices, and you've seen it reverse actual diseases, not just autoimmune. And do you believe that carnivore could reverse almost any disease?
Well, I mean, there's certainly things that aren't going to be a consequence of your diet, but most things are in my experience.
Some.
Well, type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, there are dozens, if not hundreds of autoimmune issues, things like multiple sclerosis, which can be fatal. Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Graves' disease, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, Sjogren's, SLE, so lupus. There's so many of these things that are absolutely debilitating. Sometimes it costs people their lives or their health because they have to get big parts of their body, very important parts of their body removed, like their colon, multiple parts of their small intestine, if you have Crohn's, for example, and are plagued with these issues. And then you change your diet in a month. All of a sudden,
in a month.
For Crohn's, for Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, it can work that fast. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, but you're absolutely going to see massive improvements early on. And that's because, very simply, this is removing the root cause of these diseases in the first place. And this is not a new concept. I mean, this goes back to the 1800s through the 1990s. We have been arguing, and doctors have been treating people, especially with autoimmune conditions, with a meat and water diet only. In 1991, there was a paper from Dr. Fried, who's an immunologist, who argued that autoimmunity doesn't make sense in how we've constructed it, that body is not capable of attacking itself, which I would absolutely agree on, having taken postgraduate immunology before medical school, that the body is actually incapable of attacking itself, but that all of these steps that we see in this damage that is being elicited can be perfectly explained by the known consequences of things called lectins, which are plant defensive chemicals. And it's a whole category of defensive chemical, and there's thousands and thousands of examples of these. But that the known consequences of lectins damaging your body and causing an immune response that causes further damage to the body because they're trying to clear the lectins, which are stuck and aggregated to your cells. That explains everything about autoimmune disease, and we've known that since the mid-1970s.
Does that apply to all vegetables or certain vegetables more than others?
Some are worse than others. Some have different compounds than others. Ones have different amounts of lectins and different kinds of lectins. And Dr. Fried, in a follow-up paper, I believe in 1997, argued for specific lectins from specific plants causing specific autoimmune conditions. Think about it this way. Gluten triggers celiac disease. Gluten is not a lectin, but it sort of has the same nefarious sort of properties as lectins that can bind to your cells, damage them, trigger an immune response. And so in celiac, which is actually an autoimmune condition, people don't think of it, they think of it as gluten allergy or gluten sensitivity.
It's not genetic.
Well, you have a genetic predisposition and an environmental trigger for almost everything. But the trigger is the important part there, regardless of your genetics. If you don't have the environmental trigger, nothing's going to happen. So just because you're predisposed to having celiac, if you don't eat gluten, there's no problem. And you weren't necessarily having that problem at birth from gluten. Something happened in your environment to change how your body related to gluten. And now when you have gluten, you have this problem. But you remove the gluten, everything's fine.
It's fine.
And so, well, why is that, right? Because when you eat gluten, this binds to your cells in your gut. It damages them. It triggers an immune response, probably to try to get rid of the gluten that's damaging your gut. But then when you stop eating the gluten, all the damage stops. And the damage can completely heal because your gut has high turnover and it can heal itself pretty well. So that damage heals within 4 to 6 weeks, even though the antibodies for celiac can stay elevated for over 3 years after your last exposure to gluten. So obviously that's not an autoimmune disease. Obviously those are not autoantibodies. That's not your body attacking itself. It's attacking the gluten.
Yeah. Now, would this also apply to somebody like I have family members that have hemochromatosis, right? So an iron overload. I have the opposite, not enough iron. But for somebody who has hemochromatosis, so we know they have an iron overload, and doctors will tell them, stay away from steak.
Yeah.
Stay away with anything high iron. Don't eat many meats, correct? Have you ever seen a patient that had hemochromatosis and was able to do carnivore?
Yeah, I have a number of patients with hemochromatosis that genetically and non-genetically, so it'd be phenotypically, so that they would get iron overload very easily. They would have to give blood every 2 months, and others that genetically have hemochromatosis and have to give blood every 2-3 months to keep their ferritin levels down. I've seen both sets of scenarios where people have been able to completely normalize their ferritin levels and their iron levels. And
On carnivore.
On carnivore. Yeah, eating exclusively red meat, which is very bioavailable iron. And the problem with recommending people don't eat meat because you're scared of the iron is that you're actually missing out on hundreds of other essential nutrients that your body isn't going to get any other way. And so there are other anti-nutrients that people estimate there are far more nutrients, essential nutrients, that only exist in meat and that don't exist anywhere else that we don't even have names for yet. So it's you're really doing your patient a disservice by recommending they stop eating meat because it's too nutritious, right? People don't have genetic hemochromatosis because they've just eaten too much iron. That wouldn't be genetic then, right? If you're just taking mass quantities of iron supplements and you get an overload because of that, that's not genetic, right? So if you have genetic hemochromatosis and genetic buildup of iron, it's because something is going wrong metabolically. You're not metabolizing and processing the iron properly. And so again, you have a genetic predisposition, environmental trigger. So if you remove that environmental trigger, and we don't necessarily know what it is for hemochromatosis, however, we do see that when people stop eating plants and exclusively eat meat, even though it does have more bioavailable iron in it, all of a sudden their iron levels start to normalize. Is that going to happen for everyone? There's no way to say that just yet because we don't have randomized controlled trials showing how often this works and for whom, but we are certainly seeing that signal. And I have several patients of my own who have done this, and I've spoken to many other clinicians who have seen the exact same thing as well with carnivore diet. The other thing to remember is that so-called elevated ferritin levels is not necessarily a disease. It may lead to iron overload and iron deposition in your organs, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will. And so you may have a normal ferritin, even though it's higher than someone else, because you're not actually causing any overload. You're not actually causing any deposition. You get something called bronze diabetes, where you get very dark skin because iron actually can deposit in your skin. It deposits in your pancreas. It damages your beta islet cells, and that can damage your insulin production. So you end up getting like sort of a type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent diabetic sort of picture, and you get very tan at the same time.
Interesting.
And it's actually quite uncommon. And so we don't actually know what a perfect level of ferritin is for people on a carnivore diet that is perfectly healthy for them. Because the thing is that our reference ranges for these vitamins, minerals, etc., hormones, they're all based on population averages. And that's why every single lab that you go to, even in your same city, will all have different reference ranges because they're just averages. And so the average for one person eating a certain way may be different than people eating another way. And also, does that average mean that's definitely healthy? Because most people are unhealthy. And we're taking an average of unhealthy, malnourished people, and we're calling that normal. It's not normal. There are studies that look at more optimal ranges.
Yeah.
And those are very, very different.
And there are non-optimal ranges. Like, even though they all vary, you can confirm that my ferritin last year, before I was carnivore, being at 20, is not good.
No.
While I'm anemic, not good at all.
That's even low for the standard reference ranges, and the standard reference ranges are far too low. Most men, women will tell you that they start feeling very tired, very low energy, and very unwell when their ferritin gets below 70. Once they hit 50, they feel like the Walking Dead.
And at 20, I was a disaster.
It'd be a corpse.
I felt like a corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was brutal.
And so 30 is often the cutoff. And they'll say, oh, if you're not below 30, we're not going to give you an iron infusion. People feel miserable just getting down to that point. And so they're suffering for a month or two until their iron gets down below 30. And then they get an infusion, and oh, thank God. And then they feel good for a few months. But you mentioned this as well, that your doctor said, oh, yours 20. It's not that bad. It's horrible.
All my labs were not
even
good.
Even for them, it's horrible.
And anemic at the same time. My hemoglobin also was like a 10 point something.
Yeah, that's not good.
But this could be common for women like me that get heavy periods, right? You're losing a lot of blood. Definitely don't go donating blood. But this is more common, I would say, for women with heavy periods. Is that accurate?
It is more common for women with heavy periods. It's also more common for women in general because women are more likely to eat plants. They're 3 times more likely to be vegetarian. They're much more likely to follow the nutritional guidelines, which is more plant-based, less meat, less red meat in particular. And so you're going to get less nutrients. You're going to get less iron. You're going to get less B12. You're going to get less of everything that your body actually needs to make red blood cells. And so you're more likely to be anemic just from a nutritional deficiency point of view as well.
I didn't even think about that.
Well, and also the hormone side of things, and we touched on this before we came on, but your hormones massively change depending on what you eat. If you're eating carbohydrates,
for men and women, now you're not talking about just
for everybody. Yeah,
every
absolutely.
part of your life, your hormones fluctuate.
Well, the thing is that if you're eating optimally, your body should work optimally, and that includes your hormones. If you're eating suboptimally, that can negatively affect your hormones and everything else as well. So if you're eating carbohydrates, that raises insulin, and that blocks a conversion in women from testosterone to estrogens, not in men. So people say, oh, I'll eat a whole bunch of carbs and that'll keep my no, it doesn't do that. It actually does the opposite. It actually lowers testosterone production, which we can get into. But for women, it's very simple. Women make testosterone first, and that's converted into estrogen. Insulin blocks that conversion in the ovaries, and so you get too much testosterone, not enough estrogen, and you can develop something called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is the leading cause of infertility worldwide, and people are losing their periods and they're feeling unwell. They're having this huge hormonal imbalance, which can absolutely affect your periods. Maybe you're getting them less frequently. Maybe when you are getting them, they're much more painful, they're much more severe, they're much more blood loss as well. A lot of women, when they go on just ketogenic diets, they massively will improve their hormonal function. They can reverse PCOS.
Even if it's not carnivore, even if it's a step less. And
even just ketogenic. I mean, carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet, meaning that you're just not eating carbohydrates.
But you're even better off, even if you're just going to be keto and still eat some carbs, you're still better off than a normal diet.
Yeah, I mean, just there's an idea called therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, which is a medical term for a ketogenic diet. And so you just cut out carbohydrates and your body improves. Your insulin comes down, your blood sugar comes down. These sorts of hormones can start improving. So even moving in that direction can help. Sometimes women have to be full on ketosis, less than 20 grams of total carbohydrates per day in order to reverse or maintain healthy hormonal stature. Some women actually have to get rid of the plants as well and do a plant-free ketogenic diet, which would be a carnivore diet, because plants have hormones as well, funny enough. They're living organisms, so it shouldn't be really surprising. And they also have compounds that can be hormone mimics. So they can mimic estrogen or testosterone and maybe not boost them, but maybe block the receptors so that our testosterone and estrogen don't work on them. Either way, they disrupt our hormones. And so,
but I was still worried about that. Even though I knew that, and I watch your videos and you've coached me, I'm still in my 40s. I kept being told my whole life that you need carbs, and especially for women, we have this mutual agreement between us when we're in my age group that, well, we need carbs or I'm not going to fall asleep or I won't stay asleep. And that was what I worried about the most with this, just cutting out the carbs to less than 20 grams. And they're just coming now from maybe my Greek yogurt or something like that. But I have to tell you, it hasn't. I feel better. I really... If I don't feel great, I'll go eat a piece of butter or a little bit of steak or whatever, more sodium, like you said, more salt. I don't think there's been one day where I thought I feel worse on carnivore than I did before.
Good. That's very good.
And you see that all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Some people get disrupted sleep. Most of the time that resolves on its own. 99% of people, men and women, massively improve their sleep when they go carnivore. Massively.
I can see that. Yeah. And it surprised me because there's no intermittent fasting. When you're a carnivore, you eat when you're hungry. You don't count calories. Maybe you ate a little. Maybe you ate a lot. You eat until you're satiated, till it tastes good. And you just eat high fats. You make sure things are being salted and things like that. But that's it. There's no calorie counting, right? There's none of that.
No, yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily need it. The thing is that, to actually calculate exactly how much nutrition, calories, energy you need, it takes very sophisticated lab equipment. It's not something you're just going to be like, oh, well,
On a little
bust out my
app
calculator.
that says I need 1,600 calories a day.
Yeah, you're not. And the thing is that depending on what you eat, your body requires different things and it uses that energy differently. When you're eating carbohydrates, it raises insulin. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. And so once you raise insulin, now you're forcing energy into your fat cells and you cannot get them out of your fat cells. So you will not be able to lose fat. So you actually have to get into a state of even mild ketosis to get your insulin down low enough so that you can actually start unlocking your fat potential. So 2,000 calories in donuts is very different than 2,000 calories in steak. You'd have to be a moron to think otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's not just calories in, calories out. I mean, because the thing is that we equate this to the laws of thermodynamics. Most people have not read the laws of thermodynamics, but it says very clearly that this only applies to a closed system in a vacuum. We are not a closed system in a vacuum. And so that does not apply to us. Very simply, if you have type 1 diabetes and you don't make insulin, you could eat 50,000 calories a day. You are not putting on fat. You are actually going to waste away until you die, until you get insulin. Actually, for 200-300 years, they treated type 1 and type 2 diabetes with a ketogenic carnivore diet. And that was the gold standard. Johns Hopkins University and elsewhere from Sir William Osler, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins, wrote the preeminent book in medicine, medical textbooks. He was knighted for his work in medical education and writing this book. This was the textbook. And in that textbook, he says, for treating diabetes, this is something that had been treated since the 1600s with a Dr. Sydenham. And he said, we follow Sydenham's advice where you just eat meat, you avoid all fruits and vegetables, and you keep carbs down to zero or down to a minimum and equal grams of fat and protein, essentially. So that's a carnivore diet, right? Only meat, no other plants or carbs. And so that was the only thing that was actually keeping type 1 diabetics alive without insulin. And sorry to take a bit of a tangent, but it's important because that was 10 years before insulin was actually discovered. So for hundreds of years, this was the only thing that kept type 1 diabetics alive. And in that textbook, Osler says that this could keep the juvenile diabetics, what we call type 1 diabetics now, this could keep them alive for 9 months to a year, where otherwise they die within a week.
Wow.
And he said that it had a high mortality rate, but that means high, that doesn't mean absolute mortality rate. So that means that some of these people are actually completely reversing their type 1 diabetes and being able to generate insulin again. And I've actually seen that twice in my patients. And there are 2 published case reports showing that people have reversed type 1 diabetes and been able to start making insulin again by going on a carnivore diet. And so
that's miraculous.
Yeah, well,
by the way, right?
but
not to you.
Though,
it's not to you. I know.
Well, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition again. So we think it's the body attacking your beta cells and destroying your body's ability to create insulin. So if you remove that root cause, you remove those lectins, you remove the glyphosate, you remove all the things that can damage those beta cells and elicit that immune response, the damage stops. And if you haven't completely destroyed your body's ability to make insulin, or because type 1 diabetes damages the beta cells, it doesn't damage the beta stem cells. So your body can regenerate. We know that's possible, but eventually you might burn out your stem cells. But also because your stem cells are producing beta cells, but they're just getting wiped out immediately, dysfunctionally, like you're not regrowing these things. But if you stop the damage, there's a potential for your body to regrow these things because the stem cells may still be active. If they're not active anymore, probably not. But what I've seen is that when you address this early on, then the body can start stopping that damage and can start making those beta cells and start making its own endogenous insulin again. Having spoken to the author of those 2 case reports where they've reversed type 1 diabetes with a carnivore diet, she said that they've treated hundreds of patients this way. It's generally within the first year post-diagnosis that you'll have the best results. After that's very uncommon. She's only seen 1 after that, but that was at 15 years after that. So some sort of potential. And that before that, a lot of people can come off insulin and not need it and be perfectly healthy after that, as long as they maintain the diet. If they come off of it, bam, the damage comes up again, those lectins come back, and you start getting damage again, and then the insulin comes back on again. I've seen that in practice as well. Not everybody is ever going to be able to completely off insulin, but it will massively reduce the demand for everybody because you're not eating carbohydrates. You eat carbohydrates, your demand for insulin goes up as well.
That's huge, by the way.
It is.
That they can reverse autoimmune Type 1 diabetes, I've never heard of.
Well, in certain cases anyway.
And I get it's rare, but it's better than nothing. If it was me, I would have at least tried it. You're at least not harming yourself.
No, it's not. All a carnivore diet is, when you get down to it, is just pure nutrition. It's just the raw, essential nutrients that we need in the proportion that we need them and nothing else. And it removes things that could potentially cause harm. Now, maybe they don't cause all that much harm for one person or another, but they can cause a lot of harm for a lot of people. And you don't know what you don't know.
You don't.
If you don't cut this stuff out, you have no idea that this stuff is hurting you.
Yeah, that really surprised me because, again, I'm in my 40s. And you know what was the number one thing that I suffered from my whole life? Cramps and bloating my whole life. And so I just thought that's just me and that's how I am. And it didn't matter what kind of diet I was doing. I would still get like stomach aches and cramps. And it's only now that I'm carnivore that I don't have any bloating, any cramps whatsoever. Like, could it really have been just that? The carbohydrates, the sugar, I wasn't eating
and the plants
gluten.
too.
And the plants, because I was eating
the lectins,
vegetables,
which are very damaging to the gut.
And I was eating them raw.
And fiber can be damaging to the gut as well. People don't realize that, but it causes microabrasions in the gut. It can cause increased inflammation and mucus secretion, and it can cause irritation. And there was a randomized controlled trial in humans, the only one that's ever been done of its kind, that actually showed that more fiber increased constipation, and increased IBS, and increased painful bloating and other sorts of symptoms and digestion. And that removing the fiber actually improved things, and eliminating the fiber actually eliminated all symptoms that people were having as well.
That's so weird, because everyone that knows that I'm carnivore now has asked me, but what about fiber? You're not getting fiber. I'm like, I'm not constipated.
Thank God.
I don't know. It doesn't.
Well, that's the thing. The only experimental studies that have ever been done on fiber have actually shown that it slows motility and makes you more constipated. It causes bulk, and it also slows things down. So that's going to cause more constipation, isn't it?
So it's just propaganda. Like,
it's just
like
nonsense.
all the things about sugar that they blame salt that is really sugar. Is it all just lots of propaganda and false data?
It's not even, well, it's definitely false data. Well, it's not even false data, because the data shows very clear that fiber doesn't improve constipation, actually makes it worse. Actually, more fat improves constipation, because you can only absorb a certain amount of fat, and after that, your body just eliminates it in your stools. And so that little excess fat keeps your stool soft. And this is why, coincidentally, in the 1980s, when everyone stopped eating fat, everyone started getting constipated. I was a kid in the 80s, and I remember them talking, why is everyone getting constipated? Oh, doctors say you should eat more fiber. Why didn't we need fiber before 1986? Why is it that our just genetically as a species, we just overnight, we just changed? It was just a reset in the matrix, and all of a sudden we need fiber now. It's like, it's nonsense, right? So it's not even false data, because the data actually shows very clearly that that's wrong. It was just a false pretense that we said, well, it was just an idea. And the problem is that in medicine, even when you have good intentions, sometimes you just get things wrong. And so sometimes you just make an observation and you just say, you know what, I bet this is the answer to that. And there's no competing theory. And so that just gets accepted. And so in the 1980s, someone said, well, maybe if we increase fiber, that would increase peristalsis. It doesn't. And it would make things move faster, and that would help with constipation. Okay. And that was a theory.
Or they were hired by Metamucil or one of these.
There's a whole industry behind it. But the thing is that was the theory. It could be a completely justified and honest theory. I mean, two people can look at the same information and intelligently and honestly come to different conclusions. That's fine. But the thing is that when you accept something without any evidence either being offered or even requested, you're probably going to end up, in a bad situation. So there was no evidence for this. It was just supposition. And then when the experiments came through and actually said, actually it makes things worse, it was so embedded and ingrained in society that it didn't actually go anywhere. And there's no product behind it as well. So if you have a study that shows that this drug improves some condition by 13.8%, and you're going to make money from that, you pay press releases, you get on morning talk shows, you have every single news organization across the world saying, "Ooh, there's this new study and it shows that this can improve your life. Talk to your doctor today." Things like that. And so that's not even necessarily, they don't even have to say talk to your doctor, but they can say, "Ooh, look at this study. Isn't that great? This drug is so wonderful." And it's a veiled ad. There's only America and New Zealand are able to actually make commercials for pharmaceuticals, but anybody can run an ad. If you have a reporter reading off a teleprompter about how great this study is and how great this drug was, that's a commercial.
That's a commercial, yeah.
And they're paid commercials.
Yes.
From this industry, you pay to have those spots put in.
Yeah, of course.
And so whose funding the one on, hey, you actually don't need fiber to go to the bathroom?
Nobody, because nobody's making money off of that. Exactly.
Yeah, it just happens to be true.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but we don't necessarily know about it, but it's in the literature. And so you have this false pretense. Someone had a good guess, ended up being wrong, but it had such a weight of inertia behind it that, it's very difficult to undo that. But it's a reality. People go on a carnivore diet, they don't have problems with their digestion. In fact, it improves their digestion.
I've had no digestion issues since being carnivore, none.
No, and you won't. And the funny thing is, it's like, it's great that your digestion has improved. It's great that bloating's come down. But in a way, doesn't it kind of piss you off that you spent your entire life
eating
suffering
vegetables because
and having bloated and not realizing that you didn't have to deal with any of that stuff?
Yeah, and even now that I found carnivore and I'm doing so great, people will still say, but you're not getting fiber and you're not eating vegetables, you're not getting certain nutrients. I'm like, I feel amazing.
Yeah.
I feel amazing on it.
Yeah. Well, that's always my response is, oh, but you have vegetables. Like, good. You don't want them. They're not good for you.
Yeah.
It's like saying, oh, but you don't have lead in your diet. And I was like, yeah, I know. That's sort of by design. I don't want it in my diet.
But what about those that say, now I'm on a more acidic diet, and that will lead to diseases? You're getting a lot of red meat. That's acidic. What about needing to be more alkaline? Just to play devil's advocate.
So the thing is, again, that's again an assertion without any evidence either being asked for or presented, right?
Really? It's not scientific?
So now, someone said, ooh, that's an acidic diet. Have they ever shown you the pH values of meat versus oranges?
Let alone in your system?
I mean, oranges that have citric acid in them.
Yeah.
And meat that has no acid in it. So how is that acidic? Does meat burn your mouth when you eat it?
No.
And does it make your mouth pucker like a lemon?
No.
What the hell are they talking about?
That's a good point.
Right?
I never thought about it
Well, they're just making things up.
Yeah.
Right. And so people are saying, oh, you need to be alkaline, this, that, and the other. This is someone who's never taken biochemistry, who's never taken biology, has heard something once and is now running with it.
Yeah.
Your blood pH is slightly alkaline. It is almost dead neutral. It is 7.35 to 7.45. And if your pH goes out of that balance, you die.
Yeah.
Right? Not quickly.
Yeah.
Or not right away, but it can be quickly depending on how far it goes. And so if you become acidotic, and not even acidotic, but like slightly less alkaline, slightly more towards neutral, you can die. If your pH goes from 7.35 down to 7.25, you get very metabolically sick. It's called a metabolic acidosis, even though you're still alkaline.
Yeah.
It can be very harmful. Oh, what if it goes to 7.5, 7.55? Isn't more alkaline better? We need to be more alkaline. Okay, well, that's more alkaline.
Yeah.
And what happens? You get a metabolic alkalosis and you die, right? So unless that's corrected. And so there's a big part of medicine is if that goes out of balance, we need to correct that straight away because you can die. Your body corrects this so carefully. It has to, because if it goes even slightly out, you die. And so, I mean, the idea that like we need to micromanage our alkalinity or acidity by the things that we do. I mean, how would that have worked in the wild? How's a chimpanzee doing that? How's a lion doing that? How's a dolphin doing that?
Well, people think they're doing that today by drinking alkaline water, no offense, like a water in the supermarket.
But again, there's a product there.
Yeah.
Right? And so now you're having people saying this because they can sell something. Okay, well, what if there's a study that says, yeah, that's total bullshit? There's no product on the other side of that. Say, oh, hey, use my product instead because you don't need the alkaline sort of water. It's the same people selling the water.
Propaganda.
Yeah, well, and they can just push this stuff out there. But what's the evidence that meat is acidic? What is the evidence that vegetables that have acids in them are alkaline? And that you need to be alkaline. You have to micromanage your own acidity or alkalinity. It doesn't make any sense. And so the thing is that you don't need to prove a negative, right? I don't need to prove that there's not a spaghetti monster behind the sun controlling our minds. You have to prove that it's there first.
Yes.
And then we can talk about how much control that spaghetti monster has. If you can't even prove that the spaghetti monster is there, then what are we even talking about?
It's a good point.
Because that's what they're saying. Ooh, meat's acidic and you need to be more alkaline. You need to do this. Okay, prove it.
Yeah.
What's acidic about meat? How is that causing problems? You have to show me that it causes harm first. It's the same thing with cholesterol. So, well, what about your cholesterol? This is going to cause harm because you're eating meat. You're going to get your cholesterol is going to go up. Well, it may not. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But either way, it has never been shown in an experimental trial that cholesterol causes heart disease. Ever. Not once. There have been experimental trials showing the opposite. However, the important salient fact there is it has never been proven to cause heart disease. Never. And so why are we running around trying to disprove the cholesterol heart hypothesis when it was never proven in the first place? The burden of proof is on them. I don't have to prove a negative. You've got to prove the positive. You've got to prove that cholesterol causes heart disease. It has never been done. And in fact, all the studies that have tried to do that have fallen flat on its face or even shown the reverse. And so that's actually the evidence right there.
I'm actually proof of that.
Yeah.
Because when I was very sick in 2024 and my heart was racing, you would assume something was wrong with my heart, but I did everything. I did echocardiograms. I did every test that you could do to test my heart, and there was nothing wrong with my heart. And when I was healing myself and eating more meats and fats and things like that, my triglycerides were perfect. My hemoglobin A1C, everything was great. But guess where my cholesterol came back at? 275. But my heart was perfect and I was healing myself and getting stronger and stronger. I'm sure now that I'm carnivore, it's going to change again, possibly even lower, but whatever it is, we've tested everything. All my markers were amazing and the cholesterol was high.
That can happen.
Yeah.
There was a meta-analysis of, I think, 41 to 43 randomized controlled trials, people on doing ketogenic diets, looking at their cholesterol. And they actually found that people that had lower BMI, so that were more skinny, typically, BMI is not perfect for that, but the surrogate that we use, that lower BMI actually was associated with higher levels of LDL total cholesterol. And as BMI sort of increased, it sort of came down quite sharply and then sort of flatlined for a while. And then when you got into sort of extremes of obesity, the LDL and total cholesterol actually dropped down significantly. And so being skinnier and healthier and more metabolically healthy is actually associated with higher LDL. So why are we saying that all these things are getting better, but this one thing's off? That means everything's off. And I have patients that have come to me, or people that I've spoken to, done a carnivore diet. Their cholesterol goes up, but their HDL goes up and their triglycerides come down, importantly. And the mechanism is very easy. If you are in a carbohydrate burning metabolism, carbohydrates sort of go more freely through your bloodstream. But if you're on a fat burning metabolism, like ketogenic metabolism, you need to transport fat around your bloodstream, which is essentially made out of water. Fat and water repel each other, so they can't just go freely. It has to be carried in transport molecules called LDL and HDL. So you necessarily will upregulate your production of LDL and HDL, which are just carrier molecules. There's nothing sinister about them. So your body makes it. So we're thinking that our body's just trying to kill itself, just trying to poison ourselves. And oh, thank God, all these people with this alkaline water and statins are there to save us. What have we been doing for the last 2 million years when we didn't have these wonderful people with this very expensive product to sell it to us? We obviously were just dying in the streets in the droves. No, we weren't. That's complete nonsense.
Of course.
And so, our body is not going to naturally, under physiological conditions, poison itself and try to kill itself. It's not going to happen. And so you're going to upregulate LDL and HDL because you need to transport proteins, fats, and cholesterol around the body because you're running on proteins and fats. And so you need more of these to transport more proteins and fats. It's very simple. And then as you get more metabolically healthy and you get more fat adapted, it starts to come up. Good. Now you're able to transport more energy around. You're actually healthier. And the other thing is that when you're eating plant fats, they have things called phytosterols or plant cholesterol, because plants have cholesterol too. Every single form of cellular life that we know of is actually made out of cholesterol and some version of cholesterol. It's what your cell membranes are made out of, what your cells are made out of, and your hormones are made out of. You have to have cholesterol. It's essential. You die without it. And so plants make cholesterol as well. It's slightly different to ours, and our body tries to not absorb it. We only absorb a small amount of it. And if you absorb too much of it, you get something called cytosterolemia, which is a well-known cause of aggressive atherosclerosis and heart disease. And yet doctors tell people to eat as much plant fats as possible, specifically to get these plant fats and plant cholesterols and phytosterols, because when we do absorb it, our body is very good at recognizing what it needs and doesn't need. And so if you're eating cholesterol, your body says, okay, we just don't need to make as much. And so this is why in experimental studies in humans since the 1950s, we've known that giving people more dietary cholesterol does not increase serum cholesterol and does not increase cardiovascular risk. The guy who popularized the cholesterol hypothesis, a guy named Ansel Keys, that's his own data that he presented at a medical conference, that increased cholesterol consumption does not increase serum cholesterol and does not increase cardiovascular risk. And then he spent the rest of his career saying the opposite, which is fun. But when you're eating the plant fats, it's similar enough to our cholesterol that our body says, oh, okay, we don't need to make as much. And you, again, will bring down your cholesterol production. But now it's artificially lowering it down, and the plant cholesterol doesn't fill it back up. So doctors say, ooh, this is a great way to lower your cholesterol. Phytosterols are a known cause of heart disease and atherosclerosis. It's known. It has a name, cytosterolemia, SITO sterolemia. And so we're recommending for patients to eat more of something like phytosterols, supposedly to reduce our heart disease risk, even though we know for a cold frozen fact that eating more phytosterols causes heart disease, the exact thing that we're trying to treat. It's insane. It's actually insane.
Yeah.
So when you go on a carnivore diet, you're not eating plant fats, you're not getting the phytosterols, you're in a ketogenic metabolism, a fat burning metabolism. So you're transporting more fat around the body. So your body's not artificially lowering its cholesterol. It's making as much as it needs, and now it needs a little bit more because your body is working on fat and cholesterol. And so you can normally see that. And guess what happens? You reverse diabetes, you reverse high blood sugar, which is the number one cause of cardiovascular disease, because elevated blood sugar levels, even if it spikes up and then comes back to normal within an hour, that spike is still causing damage and causes something called glycation, which damages your vessels and everything in your vessels. But it damages the vessel walls. It starts corroding them and breaking them down. And we call this atherosclerosis, heart disease, or even blocked smaller arteries. It can damage blood supply to your kidneys, to your eyes, to your feet. This is why the number one cause of kidney failure is of elevated blood sugar, diabetes. Number one cause of adult onset blindness is elevated blood sugar, diabetes. Number one cause of getting your legs chopped off and amputated is high blood sugar, diabetes. So that's causing from damaging the vessels in your coronary vessels as well, and leading to atherosclerosis also. And so you reverse that. We have clinical trials showing you can reverse that with ketogenic diets. Carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet.
Yep.
And you're also removing the phytosterols, which we know damage the vessels at all. You're getting more B12, which lowers homocysteine. Homocysteine damages your vessels. So you're actually reversing all of these issues that can actually cause very serious harm to your arteries. And your LDL goes up a bit. And your doctor goes, shut it down.
Yeah.
Take it all back. Go back to the diabetes and the cytosterolemia and all these other sorts of things, and the obesity and autoimmunity, and go back on all these medications, because my God, that LDL, that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
And it is so insane.
It really is.
You know, you can literally reverse your relative risk by thousands of %. And then you say, no, it doesn't matter. None of that matters because LDL.
None of it matters because you can't make money with that. But you can make money with statins in your LDL.
Well,
so that's at the end of the day what it comes down to.
And they've made nearly $500 billion in statins, and even on generics, they're still making billions of dollars because so many people are on statins. And now they have things called PCSK9 inhibitors, which are on patent and cost hundreds of dollars per shot, and basically do similar job to statins. But now you want them on that instead of the statins. I wonder why, because it makes you a lot more money, but they still make billions on the statins.
It's always money. Follow the money.
It is, unfortunately.
That's why I'm so thankful that there's you, and they really are functional. You're not even necessarily a functional, you're a longevity health doctor, but you're a doctor. You're a traditional MD. You're not anti-medication. You're a scientist through and through. But I'm very thankful that there's people like you that don't go where the money is. You go where the science is, the facts, the health, the vitality. And I wanted to thank you for coming all the way from Australia to the French Riviera, because
pleasure.
You're the one that inspired me to be carnivore. I've never been happier. I've never felt more hope for my health and vitality. And I guarantee you, now I can say confidently, I will never not be carnivore.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you very much. I do consider myself a very traditional doctor, and in the sense that of doctors in my great-grandfather's day, where people are actually trying to cure diseases and understand the root cause of illness and to better humanity. That's what doctors were for thousands of years, and that has been corrupted. We've taken the good name of doctors and corrupted them into basically salesmen for the pharmaceutical companies, and that needs to go. So I consider myself a very traditional doctor. I don't consider that. I consider what we call now medicine, I consider that more of a drug dealer sort of drug cartel sort of motif. That's not real medicine. Real medicine is trying to cure disease, trying to help people and get to the root cause of illness, not just paper over symptoms, and not try to cure people just because it's easier, it's more convenient, it's less hassle, it makes people money, may make those doctors money because they're getting kickbacks. And don't kid yourself, just because there's the Sunshine Act and you have to track what people spend on you with lunches. There are many ways of getting people money. They can pay them to talk at conferences. They can put them on board of directors. They can do all sorts of things to get them money. And still they get in trouble for doing this, all the time. So there are definitely ways of paying people off. And it's normal medicine to actually try to cure disease. And that's what I'm trying to do.
And I'm so thankful for you.
Well, thank you.